So the lesson for this week is about foreclosures. And the reason being is I wanted to point out that a good source for leads, foreclosure leads at least, is RealtyTrack. But they also have a lot of reports and data. And RealtyTrack is actually in the family of companies of a company I've mentioned many times now, which is Atom or Atom, ATTOM. So they're a huge data sourcing company, and they have RealtyTrack that's focused on foreclosures and pre-foreclosures. So I just wanted to mention that you might want to browse it just like you browse a store online. I think it's a good idea to browse these websites. What I love about RealtyTrack, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but what I love about RealtyTrack is it pulls from all kinds of data. So instead of going to Transon or auction.com or any of those, they kind of pull it all together. So it doesn't mean that everything on earth is in there, but it's a good source for you. And it's backed by Atom Data Solutions. So a good one to look at. Okay, so because you might look at that, I wanted to just remind us, and for those of you who are not in the Cashflow Academy, this will be your separate lesson. But foreclosures. So foreclosures, or sometimes you see REO, which is real estate owned. Sometimes you call it bank owned, but that's exactly what it is. It's property that already went through the process of retaking of the asset by the bank or the lending institution, could be a credit union. Any lending institution can take back the asset if the borrower doesn't pay their payments for long enough. And there's rules to how long you have to be delinquent and all that kind of stuff, which is too much for today's lesson. But there are two ways to satisfy the debt or to take back the property is through judicial foreclosure, which means that you go through the courts, and that's, like a lawsuit, like any lawsuit. So judicial foreclosure through the court. And the underlying lien is a mortgage deed. So you might have heard people say, oh, I have a mortgage. So you have a mortgage in the sense that you have a debt, but the mortgage deed is only for certain states that are judicial states. For example, here in California, we're not a judicial state. We're a statutory state, meaning we can foreclose through the deed of trust. The language is built in, the rights are built into the deed of trust. So no courts have to be involved except for the filing of certain forms, which is the notice of default and then notice of sale. So the bank can take back the property either through the court or through the statutory route, which is the deed of trust. And actually, some states have both. So some states have both mortgage deeds and deeds of trust. And then if, for example, the loan is FHA or VA, then once the bank forecloses, they actually get reimbursed for their losses by FHA, HUD, or by the Department of Veteran Affairs. And then those entities actually become the bank-owned entities. So you might see VA foreclosures on VA websites or auction.com, or certain websites have the VA foreclosures, and then HUD has their foreclosure website. So they actually become like the bank. They become the owner after they reimburse the lender who lost money on the foreclosure. So foreclosure is when the bank already is on title, has already gone through the process, and owns the property. So that's why I call it bank owned. Pre-foreclosure, however, is where it gets dicey for us as investors, because pre-foreclosure means that the borrower, the homeowner is delinquent, and the lender in charge, it could be the servicer, which is a third party that a bank can hire to collect payments, but also start the foreclosure process. So whoever that is actually, or it could be an attorney if it's a judicial state. So if it's in pre-foreclosure, the borrower is delinquent on payments, but not yet have they been foreclosed on. So they're in the process. So here in California, we're a statutory state. So we have the notice of default. So when someone is 30 days delinquent, the lender can file a notice of default, and that's actually filed with the county, not the courts, but the county. And the client or the borrower has 90 days to catch up that mortgage payment and any back payments. Maybe it's the property tax, maybe it's HOA due, whatever. They catch that up. And then if they don't, at the end of that 90 days, the lender then files a notice of sale, which means now it's going to sale, meaning the lender can take back the property. That period's 21 days. Lenders can extend that period up to 3 times. Like, let's say you're delinquent and you contact your lender and you say, oh, I'll have the money by December 1st, and that's past your deadline. They can extend the deadline if you're that close, because in reality, lenders don't want to foreclose. It's a big hassle. It's an expense. Now they've become liable for all kinds of stuff because they're the owner, just as if they were the landlord. They're a person landlord, right? They become a landlord to that property. They have to upkeep it. They have to go through all of that. They've got to evict people. I mean, the expenses are huge to become a bank owned, to take back an asset that way. So pre-foreclosure means, though, that the lender is not yet in possession. The original owner is. So some people advocate to write letters to people who are delinquent so that you can go negotiate straight with them before it goes back to the lender. And the trickiness of that is you have to be very careful to research what other liens are on the property, because if you just take over payments, like let's say you catch up their mortgage, right? That's one of the methods, is you can have them sign over the property to you. And you can give them cash for keys, meaning you catch up the mortgage, you give them cash to move, et cetera, and you can take possession of you can become the owner of the property and take over the underlying mortgage or debt. Problem is you have to make sure what other debts. Is there a second mortgage? Are they delinquent on taxes? Do they have mechanics liens? Do they have judgments? So you have to do a title search. Some people are successful at doing pre-foreclosures. There's just a lot of extra risk in that. So that's what I wanted to point out on that. And then keep in mind that certain states have very long redemption periods after foreclosure. So even after a bank forecloses, the previous owner of the property can catch up the mortgage even though they lost the property. So be very careful when you're buying foreclosures in states you're not familiar with. Get familiar with the legalities of things. For sure, find yourself a strong attorney to advise you if you're going to do either foreclosures or pre-foreclosure purchases. Okay. So I told you about Realty Track already. Love it because it kind of amalgamates all those different platforms that have foreclosures. They also have that schools ratings, neighborhood rating, crime rating. They had all those things on there too. So check it out. There's a 7-day free trial and lots of good information on their website. And